Hey guys, what's up? It's applecritics from applecritics.com. In this video, I'm going to be showing you the iPhone 6 Plus in 2020 and just giving a look at this original iPhone that was one of the most popular iPhones at its time and still remains pertinent today. So in this video, I'm just going to be talking about and whether you should hold on to your iPhone 6 Plus or whether it's time to upgrade your iPhone 6 Plus. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. So the iPhone 6 Plus has actually aged very well. It's been a legendary phone to say the least. It's been around for quite some time, and in that time we've learned a lot about it. Now it's definitely valuable more this year as opposed to it was last year for many reasons, but to start off, it has a 5.5-inch IPS panel that is 1080p. It's not OLED or True Tone or has any of that proprietary technology. It's still just a decent screen. It's still full HD. And once again, this iPhone 6 Plus is 6 years old. It was released in September of 2014, and it will be 6 years old in September of this year. So it has stand the test of time. So if you get a 6 Plus, you don't really get it because of the screen. You just get it because it is a cheap phone and it can get the job done. So it does have a lot of bezel when we take a look at it. There's just a lot of bezel to this phone, and that definitely dates the iPhone because on the newer iPhones, there's basically no bezel present whatsoever. Now this design honestly is just still pretty iconic. We have the aluminum on the back, we have the camera right up there, we have that Apple logo, we have the really nice color, and then we can see that we have, it just says iPhone right there. And that's the only difference to tell it between the 6S, so it doesn't have an S there, so just the iPhone. And then we just have the design there. Now, it still does have a few interesting things right at the bottom. So yes, it does have that headphone jack, believe it or not. The iPhone 6 Plus still has that headphone jack and also still has that lightning port as well. So it's good that it still has that headphone jack and lightning port and not the same USB port as the iPhone 5S and iPhone 5 did. So that's definitely a good upgrade, and that was a groundbreaking feature of that year. And the headphone jack is still nice to see in a phone because you can just use a regular 3.5mm headphone jack, and you can also use the auxiliary cable as well for this iPhone 6 Plus, so it still has that capability. So personally, I still like the design of the iPhone 6 Plus. Now we must mention that this is a groundbreaking device because the iPhone 6 Plus was the first bigger size iPhone ever. Before, it was only a 3.5-inch screen with the iPhone 5S, and it was a super small device, but this was the first big upgrade, and this paved the way for the iPhone 7 Plus, the iPhone 8 Plus, the iPhone 10 did not have a Plus version, so it was just the iPhone 10. And then with the iPhone 10s Max, we had that bigger version, and the iPhone 11 Pro Max, we had that bigger version. So the iPhone 6 Plus actually did pave its way into history in terms of Apple products because it went against all the Steve Jobs design principles, in which he said that the perfect screen size for an iPhone is 3.5 inches and it should have a form factor like the iPhone 5S. So this went completely against the norms with that huge screen that you can see right there. So that was one of the reasons why I still love this iconic design, and it was just a symbol of change for Apple, and Apple is going through some new tides. So when I'm using this phone, in terms of the design, it doesn't feel like a cheap, old, and used phone from 2014. It feels like a very premium and solid budget phone that was made in 2020. So it still feels pretty relevant. There's still a lot of budget phones out there that don't feel as good as this iPhone 6 Plus, especially just with this aluminum back. It just feels like a really solid. Now, this actual design actually reminds me of the iPhone 2G, which had the aluminum back as well, but this is just the pinnacle of its design when it first came out. I still remember those days, and it was just a joy to unbox it. So I actually do have the unboxing video that will be right at the top here if you want to watch the original unboxing of the iPhone 6 several years ago. Now, the iPhone 6 Plus came out with iOS 8, so that's what it launched with, and we're now currently at iOS 13, with iOS 14 launching later this year. But the iPhone 6 Plus can only be upgraded all the way up to iOS 12.4.7, so there's no support for iOS 13. Simply because the specs and the overall power of the iPhone 6 Plus can't match up to iOS 13, and it would be a very laggy experience overall. So Apple, interestingly enough, still does provide updates for the iPhone 6 Plus. So they have had 5 updates since iOS 13 was launched in September 2019. So the most recent update actually came a few days ago. It came May 20th, and that was for iOS 12.4.7. So I'm just going to show you that I'm running it. So if you go into General and then About, you'll see that I'm on iOS 12.4.7, and that build is 16G192. And just to prove my point, iOS 12.4.7 was released May 20th, 2020, and it supports all these devices. So the iPhone 6 Plus and iPhone 6 are supported. So Apple is still updating the iPhone 6 Plus. So that's still amazing. And this is on Apple support website. Now, once again, the main reason why the iPhone 6 Plus is not available to run the latest and greatest iOS 13 is just purely because of the specs and because it's an older device and they want to phase it out and they want people to upgrade to the latest and greatest phones. And with older devices comes many problems, which I will point out. Now, the iPhone 6 Plus and iPhone 6, amazingly enough, were the best-selling iPhones of all time, and this is just an amazing feat. So this phone is a piece of Apple's history when you think of it, because it is one of Apple's best-selling iPhones of all time. And still to this day, if you go on public transit or you just walk around in a public setting, you'll see that people are still using this iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus from time to time. So there is definitely a reason why everybody bought it. Now, some of the flaws to it would be the bend gate. So you could actually bend this phone and it's easy to break it. But if you put on a case, then there's no issues with bend gate. So that was the talk of the time when the iPhone 6 originally came out. Now, if you want to have a JB for this phone, the check rein still works on any version of iOS 12, even the latest one that I am on, iOS 12.4.7. So that is just simply due to a hardware oversight. The more times that people have with this phone, then they'll always find a way to JB it. Now, the processor that came with the iPhone 6 Plus was the Apple A8 dual-core processor with 1 GB of RAM. So it came in actually 3 different storage capacities of 16 gigabytes, 64 gigabytes, and 128 gigabyte model. Now, just thinking of it, a 16 gigabyte model in today's times is unheard of. And you would never think Apple would do it, especially with having the triple lens camera on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And just the overall storage space in terms of pictures is just getting bigger and bigger. So you couldn't imagine a 16 gigabyte model phone as a starting model. Now, the performance isn't the best, once again, compared to the iPhone 11 Pro, but you can still go into an app and it'll go into it really fast. So it's still pretty decent and there's no lag whatsoever. So it still is decent. So it does show some age. The software, once again, is still smooth and you can just go into any app really quick. So the health app, and then once you go into it, you'll see that it will work pretty quick. So there's not too many complaints on that end. So you can just see that just how fast these apps do open and there's no real lag or glitches to them. So I personally would say it's pretty good for the price and the age of this phone. As long as you don't overdo it, you should be okay. So the performance is just average. So on the front of the phone, you have a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera. Then on the back of the phone, you have an 8 megapixel camera. It's just a single camera setup. It's not a dual camera like the XS Max or a triple camera like the iPhone 11 Pro Max, but it does get the job done. And you can just see how small the camera is. And it's just a decent camera, I must say. So we can actually go into it. So here we have the camera. It's a pretty basic layout. There's nothing too much to write home about. It just does get the job done. And other than that, you can just see that there's no portrait mode. There is no special modes that are camera specific. There's no telephoto lens or anything like that. No ultra wide, no 4K videos as well. It's just only a small single camera setup and still missing out on the hardware and the new features of the 3 cameras of the iPhone 11 Pro Max. So it's just definitely lackluster and nothing spectacular about this camera. So that's what the iPhone 6 Plus camera has to offer. Now, in terms of the battery, well, the battery is pretty bad. The battery has aged. It's been about 6 years. And after 6 years, you shouldn't be expecting the same battery performance as you first got it. So after every iOS, it just seems like the battery drains more and more. And the more times you use your phone, and if it's constantly fetching and pushing for mail and using a lot of apps in the background, that's when you're going to notice the wear and tear on the battery. Especially with a lithium-ion battery, the more times you use it, the worse it gets. So that must be noted. So if we actually go into our battery health and then into battery, we can take a look at the battery health. So it actually says service, so the battery should be replaced. So that's how bad the battery on this iPhone 6 Plus is. And you can replace it at Apple for $80. But it has a maximum capacity of 79%. So that is the best you can do. So this is a measure of the battery's capacity relative to when it was new. The lower capacity may result in fewer hours of usage between charges. So 79% is a new 100% in terms of this phone. The battery is just one of the biggest complaints I have about it. But we don't expect a battery to last that long after 6 years. It should be noted. So it is a 3000 milliamp hour battery. It's decent overall. The screen pixels per inch is low, so it's not like it's a super high quality screen or anything like that. But the battery, I would say, that has degraded from 3000 milliamp hours to about 2300 in my opinion. Now, a good thing about this device being so old is that the battery can be replaced for $80. You can replace it at Apple. The parts are so cheap, so if the screen cracks or you need a new battery or something is wrong, you can easily find new parts and save a ton of money. You can find new parts on eBay or any other third-party website. You can even fix it yourself with some YouTube tutorials. So you're probably going to save a lot of money when you get this device dirt cheap. So that is something to note. Now, you're probably wondering, is it worth it? Well, I would say go ahead and check out one of Apple's new devices. At this point, the iPhone 6 Plus has served its purpose. I would not recommend getting the 6 Plus. If you do, I would say get the 6S Plus because it still has software support. It can run iOS 13, it's faster, has Touch ID, and it has some 4K capabilities as well. The iPhone 6 Plus was good, but I just don't recommend it. So if you still have it, I would say just hold on to it for a few more weeks, and then go ahead and pick up the iPhone 9, or just wait till the iPhone 12 comes out in September, I would say. So I would just try and steer away from this device. And I would say it's going to be night and day once you pick up an iPhone 11 Pro Max or just a newer device in general. You'll see that there's a huge difference between the iPhone 6 Plus and the newer iPhones that Apple has launched within the last 2 years. So the iPhone 6 Plus just has some knocks to it, just with the Bendgate, the battery life, and everything that has gone through and the lack of support from Apple. I would say that I would not recommend the iPhone 6 Plus. So thanks for watching this video on the iPhone 6 Plus. Hopefully you thoroughly enjoyed it on the iPhone 6 Plus in 2020. Please be sure to subscribe to this video. Please smash the like button down below. Also be sure to comment on what you think of the iPhone 6 Plus in 2020. If you have one, if you're thinking of upgrading, or if you have just upgraded to a new iPhone, I'd like to continue the conversation down below in the comment section. Also be sure to follow me on all the social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My username is applecritics. And be sure to subscribe for more great content. And thanks for watching.